I'm Colin Boyle, and I'm from just outside of Worcester, Massachusetts. Home for me is a house kind of in the middle of nowhere in a town called Leicester. My family has been in Massachusetts for kind of a long time. Pretty normal, working class family. My mother and my father divorced when I was very young. I am very used to knowing that I'm a child of divorce. My grandmother's mother came from Lebanon when she was 14 by herself. And she eventually wound up in Massachusetts, married a leather tanner, had 14 kids. Was always working very hard throughout her life. And so was her husband, constantly working. And I think that they weren't able to get ahead, really, because of, the aspect of the time. They were an immigrant family, working industrial jobs. It's very much a live version of the jungle. So they weren't really able to get ahead. And I think that dream has been passed down. So I think my ultimate goal in life is to be able to fulfill that dream. My grandmother was very young when she got pregnant with my aunt. She was about 15. And because she became pregnant by a man who was not Middle Eastern at all, my grandfather was super Irish, she was kicked out of the house at 15. My grandmother was the first person to teach me how to read. She's very sarcastic, and I also picked that up. And she can also be super rude when she wants to be, and I also think I picked up some of that spunkiness. I think that my grandmother inherited a lot of the, I would describe it as, first generation work ethic, and, that was then passed on to myself. I have this conception in my head where later in my life, that's when I'll cut myself slack. Right now, I need to work really hard. And coming from first generation background, talking to a lot of other students who also identify as that, it's a very similar experience where it's work hard, work really hard now, and then eventually you can take a break. But right now is not the time. My ambitions in high school were mainly to kind of get out. I really wanted to get out, and I was all about getting away. And I think that my ambition kind of powered me through everything. My high school in general is not a very competitive high school. I think that it very much matches the town in the sense that there's an attitude of being good enough. And so what's good enough is what you should do. Really propelled me to, take the you're never going to get into a school like Middlebury stereotype of my high school and push it and get in and succeed and fit in well here at Middlebury. I had opened to my other Gmail and saw that Middlebury had released the decisions that day, and I opened it, and I remember saying congratulations, and I was very shocked, and I remember I was shaking to see that. I was like, wow, I actually got into Middlebury, I wasn't expecting this. And so it felt like validation in a way. And then the following day, my parents woke me up at 5 a.m. And my parents were just super eager because apparently they had done research when I went to bed about what Middlebury was. And then, they said, you grab your coat. And I was like, is my house on fire? I was like, what's happening? Why do I need to grab my coat? They're like, oh, we're going to Middlebury. I think that I was so obsessed with getting into an elite school and coming to a school that I actually forgot about how different it would be from my experience. Being, a straight white male who rose crew and studies econ, I was around a group of people who did things that I think generally attract a bit of a more affluent audience. People assume that I come from a place of privilege and, what boarding school did you go to and all of these things. And it's not the case, and that's really frustrating to
to hear, because you want people to know who you are, and people always assume things. That's what we naturally do. And it's not fun to have those assumptions be incorrect. And I also met people who had a far more rough life than I have and have gone through so many obstacles to even get here. So it's a huge spectrum, and I'm glad I did it, but I can say definitely a moment of, wait, do I actually belong here, was super prevalent. My parents are very proud of me. They constantly remind me of it, coming from a family where there's always been this aspect of working so hard and not getting ahead. It's really cool to feel like you're helping fulfill this dream that your family's always had.